Hey, besties. Wagwan. Wagwan. Happy Monday. Not a particularly notable or relevant, interesting day. Just another regular Monday. Shout out to Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And that's it. Nothing else worth acknowledging or celebrating today on this regular ass Monday. Shout out to Black people. The vibes are rancid. How is everybody doing? I see y'all here in the chat. Y'all are here and y'all are present. I hope you are enjoying your day off if you have one. If the day is not off, I hope it's very boring. I hope it's uneventful. I hope it is not busy and you can just vibe out because nothing special. Hi, KJ. Good to see you again. Hey, Dr. Deb. Hi, Heart. Hi, Sherry. Oh my gosh, the gang's all here. Hello. Hi, Onyemi. Wagwan, shout out to the king. Yes. Hey, bestie. Okay, bonus pay come through. Shout out to everybody black. Oh my goodness, I'm actually doing well. I had a wonderful event yesterday and I'm off tomorrow too. Period. 2 days off. I am off today as well, but I will be working on my workshop that I procrastinated until this week to actually do. And listen, if y'all don't sign up for it, I'm not going to do it. So if you plan on coming, pull up. It's on Sunday, next Sunday. If you don't sign up, I'm not going to do it. Sorry. I can't make myself. So shout out to everybody who's getting paid time. Deb pulled some cards today, and oh my, you know what? I'm gonna oh, and Deb signed up. Okay, period. Thank you. I did see your name on there. So glad to see you come in. I am also going to pull cards. I don't know if I'm gonna interpret them, but I'm gonna pull them and see what happens. I do have some notes though. Today's conversation might be a little bit more technical because I have gone live twice last week already. So I don't know that I necessarily have anything new to say other than just some developments from the fiasco that was the TikTok ban. But other than that, there's one more thing I need to write down real quick on my notes. So give me just 1 second. If you have any questions in advance, though, before I get started, I would love to know. I'm happy to answer some. We have as much time as we need today. So let me know. Let me know what's on your mind. Let me pull up my spreadsheet for this last little bit of astro data that I need from last year. I worked out yesterday, as I usually do. I work out. I'm up on a schedule now that I work out 4 to 5 times a week, and it's exhausting. I don't think I eat enough to be doing that. I am getting stronger though. And for the most part, it feels good, but I also feel depleted and sleepy most of the time. So I feel spent today. I'm glad that I'm in Austin. It's literally freezing in Austin today. Let me check the weather because we had the alerts and everything going off last night. I had to drip my faucets and shit. Shitty Texas infrastructure grid held together by duct tape. Oh, it's 30 degrees right now. That's not terrible. It feels like 20 with the wind chill and all that, but there's no precipitation just yet. But it's supposed to get worse, I guess, over the next couple of days. I don't know. It might drop down into the teens. May or may not get some snow. So we'll see. But so far, not terrible. Just pray that fuck shit doesn't happen with the grid this time around. It's usually February where shit really hits the fan, but you know, we're nearing the end of January, so who knows. Okay, and then what's the last date that I need here is there it is. If you ever wondered what your iCals look like before they're iCals, they look like this. I just want to show y'all my little spreadsheet. It's color coded. Look at that. Yes, babes. So that's what I'm referencing whenever I need multiple transits at once to document the dates and the times and so on and so forth. So I have that up in the background. I need to stretch. What would be really nice is a salt bath. Ooh. But what would be even nicer than a salt bath is if a baddie wanted to come over and rub my back. I need a baddie to come rub my back. Massage my muscles. I haven't been touched in so long. All right. All right. Let me see what y'all are saying in the chat. Good to keep my brain focused too, period. It's freezing in Georgia. I'm so sorry to you all. Struggles for us in the South. We're not used to this. How is the fire in LA so far? Have we resolved some of that? Or is it still a crisis? I do have a lot of friends in LA. Most of them seem to be out of the way. But yeah. I hope that y'all are doing better. And 24 degrees in New York, but it feels like 11 degrees. Terrible. I know y'all are cold in Chicago. That's why I didn't ask y'all, because when is it not cold in Chicago? Why do you live there? That's the one reason why I don't just up and move to, well, maybe not the one reason, but a major reason why I don't just up and move to Canada, as much as I would like to live in like Vancouver or Whistler and just live at the bike park. It's too cold. I don't like all that. I don't like temperatures below, my constitution doesn't like temperatures below like 50. So, I can tolerate, a bike ride in 50s and be a little bit bundled up. It's like perfect. But anything lower than that is not for me. It's not for me. I'm of African descent. I'm a reptile. I need to be in the blazing sun. My friend in Altadena still can't get into her house. Damn, some are out and some are still going. I hope y'all can get some relief soon. I'm glad at least the Santa Ana winds have stopped, right? Chicago is too windy for me. I remember visiting years ago in April and I was almost blown away. Yo, the small town that I grew up in actually competes with Chicago for windiest city in the US. And it was very fucking windy. And it's not cool. Oh, don't love it. Do not love the wind. The wind makes me more angry than the cold. Like, it can be a hot day and be windy and I'll be pissed because I'm like, why is the air harassing me? Why is the air harassing me? I can't. So rude. So uncomfortable. And I used to have to run track in that shit. Ugh. Ugh. Hurdles. Fearing for my life every time I go over one, get like drifted. Drifted off my course a little bit. Terrible. Okay, babies. Besties, friends. Mars and Gemini. I think a breeze on a hot day is nice, but wind, like gusts, like how we used to get like 40, 50-mile-an-hour gusts just on a random Tuesday, terrible. But a little breeze is excellent, especially like it'd be hot and humid down here. So a little bit of breeze just wicks your sweat. Ooh, send a little chill up your spine. You're sitting at the pool or something. Absolutely. Sitting at the lake or something. Absolutely. Anything more than a little breeze, too much. Too much. I'm pissed off. Okay, so today, well, this week in astrology, just so you guys know what's coming down the pipeline. Later tonight, around 10:30 Central Standard Time, Mars will be back in Gemini. So right now, Mars is exactly opposite my sun. Hate that for me. But Mars is still in Cancer through the rest of the day. It will enter Gemini officially tonight, around 10:30 Central Standard Time. And we are back into the chaos. So things you need to know. Mars was last in Gemini October 20th. So Mars would have entered Cancer October 20th. It's been there ever since. But Mars originally entered Gemini August 26th, 2024. So the time period that we are kind of getting a do-over in a sense, which Mars retrogrades are a little bit different, but the original disruptions, I guess, that we're revisiting in your Gemini house would be from the time period of, like I said, August 26th to October 20th, 2024. So we're gonna run that back. What was going on for you? August, September, October 2024. Um the dates just connected so much shit. Well, yeah, shout out to you and your Mars return. All the Mars and Gemini babies, we are back with the bullshit. What was going on for you whenever Mars is in Gemini? August 26th to October 20th. We're getting a little redo on that. Mars will station direct officially on. Don't tell me I didn't write that date down. Yes, I did. I forgot to write Mars direct. Mars direct. Glad I left my spreadsheet open. Mars will station direct on. No, I did write it down. I didn't write it down. Mars will station direct. Where is it? There it is. February 23rd. So soon. February 23rd. Yeah, I moved. I moved into this apartment around that time last year, and that was exhausting. Exhausting. I had a lot of different things going on. I was in a Mars year as well, but I moved into this apartment. That was the major thing that happened during that time. Big life transition in that sense. And I think other than that, nothing specific that I can remember. What was going on for you? Smaje started their last job. Okay, hopefully a new one next week. Okay, period. Those months were horrible. I am sorry to hear it. Hey, April, welcome in. Also, hello, Lo. What did happen back then? I was straight up not having a good time. And this is one of those moments where if I were a good businessman, I would suggest looking at your astrotherapy journal because there were stickers. I have stickers for all of these dates. And you could have been documenting in your astrotherapy journal what was going on for you back then. So I don't know if I'm going to do another astrotherapy journal. I might just do a book. Like depending on how this workshop goes, this how-to workshop, I might just expand on the guidebook. I like having one product to sell. It was a little bit too much, but I think a digital version of the astrotherapy journal is it's easy to do. Just change out all the dates. So I'll probably just do that, but probably not another physical copy because printing stickers and shit like that, cutting them and all of that stuff was way too much labor. Way more than I'm invested in doing. So hey Daria, good to see you too. So yeah, those are the dates for those of you who just joined. And by the way, please like the video if you haven't already. Subscribe to my channel. We are discussing Mars retrograde back into Gemini, which is going to happen tonight, later tonight. The first time Mars was in Gemini was August 26th through October 20th of 2024. So those are the time periods that we are reflecting on. And Mars will go back into Gemini today, and it will station direct on February 23rd. Yes, of this year. So there's that. Yes, and turn on your notifications so you can be notified whenever I go live. I do try to post it on all of my socials, but you know how the algorithms are. Just have your notifications on. I only go live every so often. I know YouTube notifications are boring, but you know, we got to do what we got to do. So how do I want to start this conversation? Let's reflect on the TikTok ban first, because that kind of sets the context for a little bit of what I want to get into. I did a live on Saturday night. If you saw it, if you haven't seen it, go back and watch it. Long story short, I was talking about how what it seems like Mars and Gemini likes to do is get a little bit of information or hear a little bit of information from whatever source and kind of run with that information or immediately act on that information or something about that information is disruptive to some extent, just in this broader collective sense. And so what I feel like happened, because transits happen, planetary action happens before things go exact, right? The way that everyone right now is just kind of taking the first thing that they hear and running with it. There's not a lot of like pause to really assess what this information really means or to really just like sit with things. It's very like fast moving, a lot of information at once, a lot of information from a bunch of different sources with a bunch of different biases and a bunch of different intentions with their information. Part of that is because Mercury itself, the planet that rules Gemini, is still in Sagittarius, doing a lot of what I believe to be propagandizing. You know, I've done it. I've done it myself too. You're not the only one. I'm a little guilty. As a native Gemini, that's just kind of how I live my life. I listen to things. I take in a lot of information. And I'm not always fully aware of how my mind and my beliefs are immediately shaped by that information. But I think a lot of us are kind of having that experience right now. This last bit of Mars and Cancer, I'm really noticing how much it is about control, like what we do when we feel uncomfortable and being driven to take action because of the discomfort. So not necessarily um not necessarily leaning into indulgence specifically, but just in general, like acting on discomfort for a sense of control, for a way to feel better. So Mars in Gemini then is a bit of a contrast because it's less about trying to control, for the most part, less about trying to control ourselves and more maybe a little bit less disciplined, a little bit less self-control. And more just like, I know for me, chaos is interesting, it's entertaining. I shouldn't say that, but it's true. It's a little bit interesting and entertaining, and sometimes like I I'm just, it's exciting because it's something different. And that can be dysregulating as well, but Gemini don't really care about that. Gemini is just here for the tea. Whether the tea is true or not, it's interesting. So, when it comes to the TikTok ban being an excellent example of this, we got worked up for weeks about losing TikTok in America. And then we get to Saturday night, which is the day before it was supposed to be banned, and it just goes out. But everybody was like having their Hail Marys, throwing out their last post, revealing their deepest, darkest secrets. Like everybody was crashing out bad. And then the app goes dark basically overnight. And then I think less than 24 hours later, it might have been less than 12 hours later, but for sure less than 24 hours later, the app was back. And everybody was like, what the fuck? And you get a lot of mixed reviews, right? Some people expected that to some extent, like, yeah, it's probably going to come back. But some people really crashed out, like really melted down about it being gone. And so it was kind of our first, not kind of, it was our first taste of what it was like to have Trump as a president. Our first taste of the gaslighting and the emotional manipulation, especially, that I think is coming down the line over the next 3 or 4 years while Saturn is in Pisces. And what really did it for me was not just the ban itself, TikTok going dark, coming back on. We kind of, I at least, I'm for the most part expected that. I thought it would maybe be a longer blackout period, but it just, I don't know, depending on what your algorithm looks like and the people you talk to, it was kind of obvious that it was going to go dark and it was going to come back at some point because it's just too big. Like it's too big, it's too great of a tool for spreading information and misinformation and propaganda and the truth. Like it's too good. I couldn't see it fully going away without that causing like a massive issue in a number of different ways. And one of the things I said on Saturday was that like free speech is like America's free speech being such a big deal in America because anybody can say anything. And so in some ways that allows us to communicate each other and keep each other woke to what's actually going on. But then on the other side, it also allows the government to do literally anything and everybody can tell a different story about what's happening. So depending on you and the context through which you are receiving information, that's going to change the way that you talk about what it is that you're seeing. And that allows the truth to be whatever anybody wants it to be. So cool and everything that, I can come on here and talk to you guys and say whatever I want and criticize the government and whatever else. Not cool that the government can do whatever they want. And then all of us are going to have a different story to tell about it. And none of us necessarily know what's the truth unless the government explicitly says themselves. And even if they say, whatever it is that they're doing, we still don't trust them because they can lie also. And it won't be until years later that the CIA or the FBI or whoever releases some documents that then we get to find out, oh, so this is what was actually going on. And honestly, I feel like even that could be a lie. Who knows? But I bring all of this up, the truth telling, the meaning making, the lying, because that's what mutable transits are about. And even though nothing is in Pisces right at this moment, sidereally, the North Node is. So technically, it's not nothing in Pisces, but the North Node and the South Node have been in Pisces and Virgo for the last 2.5 years. One of the biggest events of the Pisces and Virgo eclipses was the October 7th attack in Israel that started off this iteration of the genocide in Palestine, that accelerated, I'll say, the genocide in Palestine. So ever since then, if you know the long arc of trying to ban TikTok, started in 2020 with Trump, coincidentally or not coincidentally, around a time that he was hosting a rally while he was running for president, and a bunch of people on TikTok bought tickets to the rally and then didn't show up just to buy up seats so that he would have an empty arena to speak to people. And that was kind of the first time period where I remember him saying, like, TikTok is a national security risk because it's owned by the Chinese and blah, 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 blah. And what was also going on that I learned alongside this first event with Trump with the TikTok ban was Mark Zuckerberg. Good old Mark Zucky B was doing a little press tour, shaking hands with people in I believe in China. It might have been in Singapore, but because the CEO is from Singapore, but he was making the rounds in China trying to acquire TikTok. Meta Drake. Yeah, Meta Drake is funny. He was trying to acquire TikTok and they just weren't going to give it to him. They were like, no, sorry. Mind you, Mark Zuckerberg has a history of data theft and his association with Cambridge Analytica. What is it called? Is it Cambridge Analytica? I don't know. Whatever that. What is it? What is it called? Well, whatever that company was that they basically like interfered with the election, the 2016 election, right? So Zuckerberg has a long history of data theft in the US, right? But he wanted to acquire TikTok, saw its power. Cambridge Analytics, thank you. So he was trying to acquire TikTok back then. And sorry, I got thrown off my thought. He was trying to acquire TikTok. They didn't want to give it to him. This man like went out of his way to learn Mandarin and everything else, and like gave all these presentations, talked to all these people, and they were just like, no, sorry. And ever since then, he's kind of been on this like streak to get TikTok banned, because TikTok is not only competitive or competition to Instagram, but it's also competition, we've learned, to Amazon because of TikTok Shop now as well. So a lot of people are interested in getting TikTok banned because it is competition for a lot of these American apps. And that's kind of the gist of why it's being banned. It's both, you know, recognizing its power in uniting the masses globally and kind of getting the it helps with truth telling, but it also is a powerful propaganda tool if you wanted to use it that way. Same way that they kind of went the way of Twitter. So all of that to say, TikTok left overnight. They sent out the message that said, you know, with the help of President Trump, we hope to be back online soon. And then lo and behold, the very next day, the app was back, but slightly different. So the whole thing so far, I'm trying to be as objective as possible, but what we've observed so far is that we know that TikTok, the main thing with TikTok was that they didn't want to sell their algorithm. Their algorithm structure is like special and specific to TikTok. That was the main thing that they didn't want to sell. So they were willing to, I think, give parts of the TikTok structure, sell it, but they weren't going to sell the algorithm no matter what. And they also aren't going to sell CapCut, which is the editing software that you can use alongside TikTok. So ByteDance was like, no, these things are ours. You can have these other parts of TikTok. So we got TikTok back, but already people have noted that their posts are getting censored. A lot of accounts got deleted, are banned. A lot of people are demonetized now, and the search function is different. The algorithm seems different, and it's just not quite the same. The quality of the app is different. Like, so they took it offline to do some server migrations, I'm sure, to change some aspects of the app and then bring it back online. Now, there's a lot of speculation about what happened. We don't know, but things that we do know is that Meta stock went up before a lot of these things transpired. I think mostly because they were anticipating everybody leaving TikTok and going to Instagram because that's kind of the next most similar thing as far as like reels and shit like that. Um, and because, Zuckerberg is up there lobbying against TikTok with everybody else. So that was their kind of like next best thing. Let's throw all of our money and our stock into that. And then we find out that Meta has also released their version of CapCut called Edits, so that you can basically edit whatever. Everything Mark Zuckerberg's ever done has been a copy of something else that's already existed, just stealing ideas from other people, not an original thought in that man's head. So now we're here and everyone is freaking out. So I give all of this context and this history to say now we've reached a point where you can feel the mutable in the air. You can especially feel that Pisces North Node kicking off, and also like the way that more Pisces transits are creeping in, which I'll get to in a moment. So, um, basically we're at this point where we don't have enough information, like enough concrete, objective information to explicitly say what's going on right now. We just know what everybody else is talking about. And that to me feels like the Gemini of it all, the Mars and Gemini of it all. And the fact that the information that we do get and the experience of like having this information and not fully knowing what's true and what isn't true, that feels like the Mars of it all, the disruptive aspect, the disruptive nature of it all. Is just everybody is talking, everybody has their ideas of what's going on, what they're witnessing, what they're observing, but nobody knows the actual truth because we won't know until we're in the moment where the truth is being revealed. Or we just may not know at all and we'll constantly be wondering and constantly have to fill in the gaps of what we think is going on with the information that's available to us. And that right there, this idea of not having the full picture, not having all of the information that we need, the explicit information that we need to draw an accurate conclusion, but still having a ton of information to just kind of piece together in whatever way tells the story that we want to tell. That to me is like the crux of the upcoming square between Jupiter and Gemini and Saturn in Pisces. So if you wondered what 2025 was looking like, that's what I'm thinking. Just a lot of nobody really knows, but everybody is noticing something and everyone's trying to make sense of it with the information that they have, and everybody has a different story to tell. Um, and that kind of made me think about the relationship between Gemini and Pisces. Um, which I will come back to in a moment. I want to see what y'all are saying in the chat. Okay. Like when Twitter got rid of circles. Yeah, I actually made a post on TikTok where I was talking about how, we've gone through this exact thing with Twitter ever since Elon bought it, or even since before Elon bought it, because we thought he was going to either break the app or it was just going to be totally different from the way that we've used it. And for the most part, it's like somewhat been the same, but it's just super duper propagandized at this point and very, very antagonistic and intentionally like antagonizing you constantly. So all the times that we thought Twitter was going to die, I believe we'll have a similar relationship to TikTok until like over the next, what they say, 30 days or 90 days that they've extended it. And I did see, I don't know if this is true, but I did see there's kind of a loophole about like you can't download the app again since it's been banned. So don't delete it if you plan on using it again. I just recommend not deleting it anyway. And then something else. There's some other, I think just you can't make money off of it anymore. So it exists in the way that you can use it, you can swipe, you can post, you can comment, but like so many different things about it are not accessible. So it's kind of a shell of itself at the moment. Yeah, the back and forth is dizzying. And this is intentional. This is like psychological manipulation, basically, that they're doing. The one thing that I think a lot of people are overlooking is that, regardless of what you think about TikTok, whether you like it or don't like it, the fact that it does exist it is a global app, but that people's livelihoods, like the work that they were doing, even if it's just content creation or whatever, people were making a lot of money and being able to sustain themselves using that app, which is very much like small business, a bunch of small businesses on that app. And however you feel about capitalism and everything else like that, the real reason why this is an issue is, one, obviously censorship, but two, the fact that the government just demonstrated in a very abusive way that they can dangle your sense of security, your job, your work, like your ability to make money and sustain yourself and be self-employed and all that kind of stuff. They just demonstrated to all of us that in the blink of an eye, they can erase all of us if they wanted to. They can take all of us off the internet, disconnect all of us from the rest of the world, and basically like unemploy you at any given moment, even if you work for yourself. Like that sets a massive precedent for a fascist government. And that's the thing that I think people aren't taking seriously enough. I admittedly didn't even take it seriously enough because I mostly a consumer on TikTok. So I was like, okay, well, if it goes away, then at least I still have Twitter. But it's not good that the government can tell you for months, for years at this point, that they're going to get rid of this thing that is helping you survive, and then literally do it in the blink of an eye, not even give you a warning, do it in advance, and you not know if you're ever going to be able to do that again. Like, that's not cool. A lot of people were fucked up over that. So it's just something to keep in mind. If they have the power and the audacity to do that, who knows? Who knows what else they could do? So yeah, throwing people into chaos. Seriously. Um, Free speech is America's lie. Yeah, and it's like it, and also that because they act like, we can say anything, but we also can't, and that doesn't necessarily pertain to businesses as well, which I think is fine. I think some moderation, like not just letting people say anything, is a good thing. I do think America takes free speech way too fucking far. But at the same time, I'm not going to sit here and be like, they should start censoring everything. I don't know. I don't know exactly where I stand on the free speech thing. Obviously, I'm someone who yaps on the internet and tries to, you know, promote free thinking or thinking outside of propaganda, but I just think everybody shouldn't be allowed to speak. I don't know. Maybe we don't need access to everybody's thoughts sometimes, but it's a tricky place to be in. It's so interesting psychologically to see how quickly the manipulation can be felt quicker and easier once a Republican like Trump goes back into office as opposed to the liberal bubble. Yeah. And I have beef with liberals, but we'll talk about that another time. Yeah, Cambridge Analytica, that was the one. I don't remember what I said, but yeah, that was a big. If you don't remember that or if you were too young for that, you should look into it because that was a big fucking deal. The fact that Mark Zuckerberg is allowed to do anything with our data and social media is like terrible. They changed the IG profile layouts to rectangle layout and it's so ugly and unoriginal. Yes, they did. If you haven't updated your TikTok or your Instagram, a lot of changes are happening to Instagram that's basically copying TikTok. So, not an original thought in that man's brain. I saw a tweet that spoke about the disability community sounding the alarm on fascism in 2021, and now it seems like everything is catching up rapidly. This Pisces stellium buildup is just loud. Yes, it is. Where are the whistleblowers nowadays? They are getting murked by Boeing. Have we reached the Mars return of the Twitter purchase yet? Not trying to distract. That's a good question. I have no idea. Um, I didn't document that when that happened, but if anybody happens to know or wants to look that up in the chat, please do, because that's a really good question. We had a whistleblower last time Jupiter was in Gemini, Edward Snowden, who funnily enough has Sun in Gemini. Good call, Sherry. Yeah. Ooh, interesting. Yeah, Edward Snowden, he's ducked off somewhere. But yeah, that was a big deal too. Damn. And last time Jupiter was in Gemini, like we said, was 2013, 2014. It's the fact that people had ownership over their labor, a threat to capitalism. Yes. Yeah. I think I'm still in denial, trying to get out of it. We don't control any of this, and I think that's incredibly alarming. And that's the thing. When we talk about today, I'm talking more about Mars and Gemini, but when we talk about any cardinal transits, which kind of still come up today, any cardinal transits are always about us reckoning with what we do and don't have control over. And I think something else I said on Saturday is a lot of these Cancer transits coming up in the future between Mars, this Mars retrograde in Cancer stuff, and Jupiter in Cancer later this year and next year. A lot of that cardinal shit is like the elites controlling what we do and don't consume. You know, the elites, the government, whoever, like globally vying for control over what we do and don't consume and have access to, and our ability to get our needs met. You know, they're controlling the water, they're controlling the food, they're controlling um like where all of our resources go, and especially whenever it comes to our comforts and entertainment, like control over that as well. And us just realizing like a lot of that stuff, like we are dependent on these entities whether we want us to or not. So oh well, would you look at that? Elon's Twitter has Mars in Cancer at 3 degrees. Mind you, Mars is in Cancer right now at 0 degrees. And I believe was at 0 degrees, maybe late 1 degrees Cancer when TikTok went dark. So parallels are paralleling. Yeah. Don't you love astrology? Thank you for that, Samaje. Um, I knew you would pull through for me, boo. Okay. Okay, cool. So let's get into the relationship between Gemini and Pisces just in a general sense, if I can remember what I was saying this morning, what I was thinking this morning. Um so we've talked about how the Pisces experience is just simply not having all of the information that you need to draw an accurate and precise conclusion. It's being given bits and pieces or simply just like reading into vibes and then making a judgment based off the vibes. And a lot of times the vibes are felt in your body. We call that intuition, right? And intuition, a definition that I've been working with, especially when it comes to Pisces, is not that intuition is just some like random thing. It is the wisdom of memory and experience. You know, when you are, for example, an athlete, and I used to play basketball. I spend enough times in the gym day after day after day shooting free throws. My body is going to know how to shoot free throws before my mind does. That form is going to be like I'm going to embody the form of shooting a basketball, so that any situation that I'm in, if there's a moment that comes up where I'm shooting, I don't have to sit and think about every single aspect in detail of how to position my body to shoot a ball. My body's just going to shoot, right? So, yeah, same way with playing an instrument, listening, like having your ear be tuned to the music, right? Being able to hear and know exactly what notes are. A lot of intuition comes from practice. Practice meaning like having multiple experiences with a thing, multiple embodied experiences with a thing or an experience or whatever it is, that your body knows what it is before your conscious mind even necessarily knows. And if you wanted to take it into the woo woo, like having insights from ancestors or from spirits or from some, some kind of stream of consciousness that is universal to some extent or whatever. It's like um you don't have to go through the conscious effort to recall something. Your body just responds, just knows what it is, just remembers, body keeps the score type of vibe. And it's not woo woo if you black, but I'm just saying, if you I try to be as practical as I can, because I know sometimes the spiritual doesn't resonate with everybody. But even that, even to me, even if you don't believe in ancestors in a spiritual sense, like your body is made up of the DNA of all the people who came before you. Parts of them live in you as well. You also embody their memories and their experiences in your body, in your DNA. So it's a very literal thing, right? That's Pisces to me. So you can know things without necessarily knowing things. You can draw conclusions based on the things that you're observing and the things that you're feeling and come to accurate conclusions based on that. And sometimes the other side of it is that things are not what they seem. Things are not necessarily what they feel like they might be to you. So it's double-edged sword. It can go either way depending on the context. Basal ganglia and cerebellum implicit learning versus or via repetition make forward and inverse models. Very complicated way to say yes that implicit learning basically meaning that you don't have to you're not receiving like external information necessarily to no, what am I trying to say? Like the damn, I don't even know how to summarize that in a in a non academic way, but yes, that. If you've heard people talk about like implicit biases versus like explicit biases, I think Pisces is the implicit biases. Whereas like explicit biases to me is the experience of being indoctrinated into something. Basal ganglia is part of your brain. Basal ganglia and cerebellum are different parts of your brain. If you want to look into those, I recommend that. But there are, if I'm not mistaken, and Deb, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know for sure cerebellum is like in the back part of your brain. I think basal ganglia is as well. So the lower back parts of your brain are considered more, for lack of a better way to put it, primal. They're automatic. They function without you needing this part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex that everyone talks about. This is where all of your simple way to put it, your like conscious forward thinking, planning and impulse control and all that kind of stuff comes from the front part of the brain. But things like the basal ganglia, the cerebellum, the amygdala, all that stuff in the back of your brain kind of runs without you needing to pay attention to it. It's gonna make you take off running when you see a threat, when you see a tiger, whether you are scared of that tiger or not. Your heart rate's gonna go up, blood's going to go out to your limbs so you can get away, rush away from your heart or rush away from your stomach, stops digestion, all that type of stuff, right? So back parts of your brain are what are going to save you in a crisis usually. They're going to help you get the fuck out of a dangerous situation. Front part of your brain is going to help you plan and like have the kind of anticipate things and expect things to happen that maybe are not happening yet. There's a lot more imagination that happens in the front parts of your brain, whereas the back parts of your brain is just like, hey, we need to stay alive. That's all we care about. So in some ways, implicit biases, implicit memories, things like that kind of function more in these back parts of your brain, where if you have a memory, I think we've talked about the snake analogy before. You're walking through a forest and you see a stick, but your brain thinks it's a snake. Better for you to think it's a snake, even though it's a stick, than to think it's a stick and it's actually a snake, because one of them can kill you. Yeah. Basal ganglia, thank you. Basal ganglia is biasing, is it a stick or a snake? Better to think that it's something that can hurt you and it be something harmless than to think it's something harmless and it can actually hurt you. That's like mostly what we're talking about. And so all of that to say, yes, psychology and intermission. That's my neuropsychology, my favorite shit. That's why I love having Deb in here with me. But all of that to say, Pisces is the human experience, whether you have placements there or not, is the human experience of knowing some kind of anticipating something to be a certain way before you fully have all the information of whether it is or is not actually that. And that is an important survival strategy. If you are in a place like having an experience that feels off to you, that feels threatening to you, but you don't really know why, that's Pisces. And then later you can do the Mercury things from the Virgo and the Gemini perspective. That's like, okay, let's figure out what the fuck that actually was. Let's get the data, let's get the information, the evidence, let's talk about it, let's discuss it so that we can try to arrive at some kind of shared reality or shared truth about whatever the fuck that was that just happened. So that's what I'm talking about when I say the relationship between Pisces and Gemini. And what I think is interesting about Pisces and Gemini specifically is the square. The square meaning that Gemini, let me make sure I'm getting this right. Pisces imposes itself on Gemini. I almost said it backwards. Pisces imposes itself on Gemini in the sense that basically that square is fuck what you heard. Fuck what you heard. Take it with a grain of salt. We don't know if that's true or not. What I think is interesting about both of these signs is that they both have their own ways of kind of giving the benefit of the doubt that I've noticed in people. Um, Pisces is kind of like, well, maybe they didn't mean to do this thing that it really feels like they kind of meant to do. Surely they're not that bad. Surely it's not the worst case scenario, even though it feels in my body like it might be the worst case scenario, but I don't know. And if I don't ask, I don't have to find out. Like, that's kind of the Pisces vibe. Sometimes the Pisces vibe is also, I don't want to ask because they might lie to me and not actually tell me the truth, you know? Or like, I don't see the point in asking a question if people are just going to lie to me. That's something that I see comes up a lot with Pisces as well. Um, sometimes Pisces is making an assumption that because again you've had this specific type of experience multiple times with something that looks a certain way, automatically assuming that that's probably what's happening again. And then there's also speculating, like because you're unwilling to ask for whatever reason or another, unwilling to ask a question or get the information, you just sit and spin stories yourself on what you think it may or may not be without necessarily allowing new information in. So that's kind of the Pisces experience on the one end. It's, to me, it's a lot of, it can be a lot of using your own biases, like we talked about, to fill in the blanks instead of seeking out things that maybe contradict what you feel like something is. Or when you do get conflicting information, it's doubting the conflicting information in service of your own story. And that's just a Jupiter thing in general. Jupiter always wants to prove itself correct, whereas Mercury, I think, leans a little bit more in the self-doubt direction, except for Virgos. No shade. But Virgos really be thinking they're the experts a little bit more than Geminis. Geminis are more prone, I think, to thinking that they're wrong. So, you know, but Jupiter in general, like I said, wants to be right. Jupiter in general is those hind parts in your brain that are like, if we don't believe this, we'll die. So we need this to be true, child. And when it's not true, that can be very disorienting. So Gemini, God, I've been trying to get at this conclusion for like 20 minutes now. But Gemini, then, I think part of the reason these two signs beef with each other is because Gemini is just like constant flow of information. Like, even when you didn't ask, Gemini is just in your ears. Hey, by the way, did you know? Did you hear? Oh, so and so was talking about it. Hey, bestie, I have the tea for today. Let me tell you all about it. And then Pisces is in a situation where they're like trying to make sense of all of this noise and all of this information of like, Gemini, what the fuck am I supposed to do with this? What am I supposed to do with this information? What does it mean? Like, okay, yeah, sure. So and so said this and this was the outcome, but like, what does it mean? What does it mean? And Gemini's like, I don't know. That's just what they said. I don't really have an opinion one way or the other. And Pisces is like, ask me how I know. This is what it's like when me and Amelia talk to each other. They got Mars and Pisces in the first house, and I got the moon and Gemini in the first house. And I just be like, we should just argue for fun. And they're like, bro, no. Why would we do that? I'm like, because it's fun. And it's the relationship between air and earth, right? Where air is like, just kind of like jumping from one thing to the next. It's like fleeting thoughts. Nothing is really that consequential. It's just information. You can take it or leave it. Those are like the Gemini vibes. But Pisces is like, no, baby, this means something. This pattern of behavior is not just like nothing. It's not just inconsequential, Gemini. There's something happening here. We need to read into these things that are happening. And look, sometimes you actually really do. If there's anything I've learned from Pisces people, it's that, oh, that did actually like really mean something more than what I thought. I just was like Well, we never really know, do we? And Pisces is like, bitch, don't talk to me. So, when I think about why am I talking about all of this? Why is this relevant? Well, like we said, Mars just went back into Gemini, and a lot of what Mars and Gemini is doing is laying disrupting, I'll say, the path. Like Mars and Gemini is like a tornado going down the street, blowing everybody's house up. And Jupiter is going to come back through to assess the situation in Gemini to be like, damn, all of this shit just happened. Like, what does this mean? Ironically enough, Jupiter in Gemini is kind of trying to figure out, what is all of this chaos and this disruption like? How do we make sense of all of this? So we need to go and survey all of the lands that Mars and Gemini just traversed. And we need to come up with a new story to make sense of this, because all of this didn't just happen for nothing. That's what I think, to some extent, Jupiter and Gemini is going to do later this year. And that's why this phase of the Mars retrograde is important, because of course Mars is going to go back to 22 degrees Gemini. It's going to pause. It's going to go back forward again. So a lot has happened in the sign of Gemini, and it's a foreshadow, more or less. And as Mars is going back through Gemini, we have a lot of significant Pisces transits, because Mars will be in Gemini from today, January 20th, till April 2nd. April 2nd. Do you hear me? Dog, like 3.5, 4-ish months. Mars will be in Gemini. Fucking shit up. And you know what else is going to happen at the same time that Mars is in Gemini, babies? Venus is going to retrograde in Pisces. And you know how soon that this Venus retrograde in Pisces happens? This is so fun. I'm getting y'all all worked up. I'm going to edge y'all on this a little bit. You know what's going to happen? At the same time, Mars is doing all this nonsense over the next 3.5 months. As soon as Monday, January 27th, Venus is going to retrograde in Pisces. As soon as Monday. Monday! Goddamn. And you know how long Venus is going to be in Pisces too? Venus is going to be in Pisces until May 31st. Oh, dog. McCan't. And in fact, most of the actual retrograde phase, the Venus in Pisces retrograde phase, is from March 1st to April 12th. So, yeah. We're in this bitch. Let me see what y'all are saying in the chat before I go on. Because yes, I do actually have more to say. This is fun. I'm glad we're here instead of doing that other thing that's not relevant or worth speaking about today. Fuck what you heard. Yes. Oh, that explains COVID precautions so well with the psychology of it all. Exactly. I know, I'm sorry I was dragging y'all to hell with me, but I'm in it as well. Yes, astrotherapy. See, and this is a great plug for the workshop. This is what I mean whenever I say I talk about astrology a little bit different than some other astrologers do, just because I think the mind is reflected, like the actual psychology of people's beyond personality is reflected so clearly in the astrology, but people don't talk about that as much as they do just like individuals. So I try to talk about it as these larger collective experiences that we all go through, whether you have planets in that sign or not, because when planets are moving through a sign in real time, we all going through it. We're all having that experience. So just because you don't have a placement in your chart doesn't mean you don't have that experience. Some part of your life is all about that experience. So yeah. Okay, I'll take this. Pisces is the only mutable sign I don't have in my chart. It's just very funny because one thing about me, I will ask even if you might lie to me. And same, I will too, because my thing is, Gemini is the only mutable sign that I have, other than my lot of fortune in Sagittarius. And I'm gonna ask the question anyway, because even if you lie to me, I still have my own discernment and pattern recognition, and I'll be able to clock. I mean, sometimes I won't. Sometimes I'm gonna just believe you and take it at face value and fool me once, shame on you type shit. But there's a whole lot of different ways that you can gain information about something by asking a question that's not just accepting the answer at face value. And that's something I think all of us need to take with us over the next 3 years, is that just because someone gives you an answer to a question you asked doesn't necessarily mean that the answer itself, the words that they speak, is the answer. Sometimes you can tell, like, oh, well, why did they hesitate? What was that pause all about? What was this being the Pisces of it? Like, why was their body language like that? Why do they sound defensive? Why do they sound worked up? Why did they get emotional? This and that. There's so many other cues you can pick up on through the process of asking a question that will give you a lot more information than just the answer itself. So there's one thing you can learn from Pisces, is that the imagination is great, but it can be troublesome as well. Exactly. Um, Virgo does think that we know better until it's something in our body, and then we need more info. Yeah, exactly. Uh, and that's what I fuck with about Virgo. Virgo at least is gonna come with the receipts. Gemini is just like, well, this is what I heard. That's not always a reliable source. Um, isn't that a Cardi B lyric? Anyways, I can't remember it, but yeah, Virgo is at least coming with receipts, with some kind of evidence that's kind of hard to disprove. So that's why they be thinking that they know, and a lot of times they do know. Gemini could it would be wise for Gemini to actually acquire concrete evidence of the claims that they are repeating before repeating them. Oh, my candle just went out. Oh, it didn't go out, but it's going out. Um, the way Gemini just glosses over something super weird. Yeah, real bad. Child, me too. Reading myself. I know y'all are in this with me, Geminis. Period. Okay. Maybe Mars will be kinder this time, child. And I have more to say about that too, actually. But not just yet. I have to talk about something else I said I was going to talk about. I already forgot. It's in my notes though. I know I'm in a Jupiter year now too, child. Whole trip will be lit. Whole chart will be lit up like a Christmas tree. Yes. all the all the mutable signs need to just sit down and be humble. Truly, I am choosing silence. Shout out to questions. Hey, Rory. Hey, Madison. Hey, you guys. Welcome to the party. Yes, thank you. She say she gonna do what a who? That's not a reliable source. You knew what I was talking about. I know I can always count on y'all. Thank you so much. Okay. So yeah, Mars and Gemini. The reason we've been talking about Gemini and Pisces so much is because yes, Mars is going back into Gemini, but as soon as Monday, Venus is going to enter Pisces, where it will be until May 31st because of a long ass Venus retrograde. And later down the line, we'll talk about this a little bit more in March, but there is so much Pisces happening at the end of March, including Saturn entering Pisces. But it's like, it's too much. There's that big ass stellium, big ass eclipse. Saturn moves over. Like, it's too much. Venus retrograde, like, it's too much. It's too much. But these are the times. These are the times that we're in. So, next thing. And we'll talk about Venus and Pisces next week. But as far as Mars and Gemini this round, and this whole analogy of the tornado flew around my room before you came, excuse the mess it made. Mercury will be in charge of Mars again. So, oh, I misspoke earlier when I was talking. Well, this is still true though, because Mars will be ruled by Mercury starting later tonight, and Mercury is still in Sagittarius until the 24th, which is Friday. So Mercury enters Capricorn on Friday. This is also on our list of things to talk about. We were talking about cardinal transits a minute ago, and what we do and don't have control over, what we're wrestling for control over. So the first, how do I want to say this? So while Mars is in Gemini from now until April 2nd, or later today until April 2nd, Mercury is going to move through 3 different signs. I have another surprise inside for you guys. I'm so sorry. Um, so Mars will be ruled by Mercury. Mercury is going to move through 3 signs between now and May. Mercury will be in Capricorn starting this Friday, January 24th through February 11th. Mercury will be in Capricorn. We'll have Mercury in Aquarius from February 11th to February 27th. So Mercury's moving pretty fast. So you know what that means, friends. Once we get to February 27th, Mercury will be in Pisces with Venus. Mercury will be in Pisces, and surprise, bitches, it's going to station retrograde in Pisces on March 15th. So we will have a Venus retrograde in Pisces and a Mercury retrograde in Pisces around the same time, square Mars and Gemini. Mercury will be in Pisces from February 27th to May 6th. February 27th to May 6th. All that says to me is that Mercury is going to station early degrees Pisces. As a matter of fact, let me look and see exactly what degrees. I meant to write that down and I forgot. Mercury retrograde in Pisces. Yeah, 15 degrees Pisces. It'll station retrograde. So we get the first half of Pisces. And keep in mind, all of these retrograde degrees, I know these long ass transits are going to piss us off. Clearly, we need some Pisces. Hey, Jada. Clearly we need some Pisces, because the way the first half of this year and most of this year like is water transits, we need Pisces, we need Cancer, we need Scorpio, baby. Like, it's too much. But so much Pisces. Clearly there's a reason. Clearly we need to work on our pattern recognition. Clearly we need to get back in touch with we need to confront our intuition and our implicit biases. Clearly we need to manage our expectations. Clearly we need to learn how to ask questions, but we also need to learn how to make sense of things and create new meanings and all that shit. But the biggest thing about all this shit, all of these retrogrades happening before Saturn gets to Pisces, is that like Saturn and Pisces is going to have to work out a lot of this shit too over these degrees. And I'm sure there's some, well, I'm not sure. There may be some connection between all the degrees. I didn't write down degrees as much as dates today. But there's probably some connections and I haven't written them all out because that's a lot to do. That's a lot to focus on. But maybe I'll work on that after this workshop stuff. Because now I'm curious and I have to look. Where does Saturn station retrograde? Saturn stations retrograde on July 13th at 7 degrees Pisces. Fuck me. That's square my moon-ish. Yeah, 7 degrees Pisces. So Saturn is moving real slow. Real slow. Yes. I don't know what y'all said about exalted planets. Let me see. Yeah, Mercury is chopping. Venus is chopping right now too, but she's about to slow down. I prefer Mercury over Venus in Pisces. Yeah. I don't even know if I prefer Mercury in Pisces. I feel like Mercury in Pisces, everybody be speaking gibberish. People think that they're telling you something coherently and they're really not. They're leaving out whole words. Everybody got more typos. People are just like they're having more inside thoughts and thinking that they're saying them out loud, but they're not. You said a lot of things in your head to yourself that you didn't actually verbalize to me. I'm gonna need you to tell me what you're thinking. How did you get to that conclusion? Because you talking about this over here and I'm still over here trying to figure out what we saying. Uh no, listen. It's such a weird year. I think the second half of it is supposed to not be as bad, depending on which astrologers you ask, but yeah, exalted planets, Venus. So Sherry's talking about this because Venus is exalted in Pisces. Planets that are exalted kind of just like do whatever they want and don't like exalted planets are kind of like a who gon' check me type of vibe sometimes. They just do a lot because they can. Yeah, Samaje, they just do a lot because they can. Planets in domicile, like at least planets in domicile know themselves. But planets in exaltation, they're just kind of like it's like if you go over to your sneaky links house and you don't really live there, you know, y'all aren't really like in a committed relationship, but you can do whatever you want over there. What's mine is yours, just don't tell nobody. Don't tell nobody what we be up to, baby, but what's mine is yours. That kind of feels like some Venus and Pisces business. That sounds like some fuck shit. Um I fear for us Pisces rising folks when Saturn joins a party. Just a friendly reminder to all the Mercury ruled people that all the Mercury retrogrades will be in water signs. Water isn't all that great with speech and communication, so rather just keep quiet. Yeah, it's like Mercury in Pisces especially is like having it's like speaking whale, you know? Like speaking whale, you're underwater trying to talk to somebody and it just gets lost in translation. The sound carries, but you don't have a fuck what they just said. You don't know what the fuck they just said. No fucking clue. It's just like across the ocean and you're like, "Okay, I heard you, but what?" I'm not interested. So a Mercury retrograde in Pisces, child, I don't know. We'll see what happens. Speaking whale. What did Dory say? We are looking for his son. Anyways, you just might have to learn another language, you know? A lot of people who have lived in countries where that they speak English and don't speak the native language, like that's also a Mercury in Pisces conversation. So we got jokes today. I'm funny today. It's because I'm procrastinating. I got jokes when I have other things I need to be doing. Okay. So yeah. Mercury in Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. And what else? So yeah, I guess the last thing to do is not too much on Doriana. Um That's how I felt last year with the Pisces transits, literally a whale. Yeah, I just feel like I don't understand what anybody is saying. Everybody's talking, but like there are no real words. Trying to learn other ways of communicating. Also this. It's one of my favorite things to talk about when I do relationship content. Okay. That being said, the next thing I wanted to piece through to talk through is what does it actually mean for Mercury to be in these different signs while Mars is in Gemini? I don't have this fully fleshed out, so we're going to work through it together. I'm just going to talk out loud about it. So these are not like concrete predictions necessarily. I'm just going to channel and see what happens, even though my candle went out. Or maybe we can just be silent. Words to Jill Scott. Maybe we could just shut up and observe, which is actually not bad advice sometimes for Pisces transits, to say less and observe, to pay attention. So Mars and Gemini while Mercury is in Capricorn. I think what I want to do, at least what I have written down in my notes, is just without totally getting into predictions or diagnosing these transits, I want to just talk about the relationship between Gemini and these signs, because I think that would be interesting, an interesting way to start the conversation, and to get us thinking and to kind of prime our brains for what we should be watching or paying attention to. So, okay, hello subscribers. I see y'all. I see y'all here. Shout out to Laura. Shout out to Heart for subscribing. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Turn your notifications on so you can be notified every time I go live. And if you haven't liked the video already because you think I'm funny, if you really think I'm funny, you would like the video. Okay, let's talk about the relationship between Gemini and Capricorn. I'm going to read myself, I fear. Gemini, excuse me, Capricorn is in the 8th house from Gemini. So if Gemini is the rising sign, Capricorn is in Gemini's 8th house. They are 8 signs away from each other, or 7 signs away from each other, depending on how you count it. This is an air and earth relationship. This is an air and earth relationship. And air and earth don't really fuck with each other like that. It's very dry relationship between the two of them, and especially Gemini and Capricorn. And as we've talked about before with the 8th house relationship, or this quincunx relationship, is they kind of just are like, I could probably learn a thing or two from you, but doing so would require me to do things that are very uncharacteristic of me, that are very unfamiliar to me, that just don't really feel like something I want to do. It's going to kind of require something of me to embody your characteristics. It's going to, especially with the 8th house, it's going to require me to sacrifice some aspect of myself, or to give up some aspect of myself in order to embody your characteristics. But maybe that's worth doing because I could learn something from that behavior. So this is the 8th house relationship. The 8th house in general represents, like I said, this idea of of sacrifice. But it's also what you have access to, especially when given to you from other people. So Gemini and Capricorn is like, Gemini, like we've been saying, is just taking in information, learning endlessly, being knowledgeable about so many different things, whether you actually believe in those things or not. And it can be fun to learn the more you know, right? Whereas Capricorn, and especially Mercury in Capricorn, I have this placement natally, can kind of represent some level of ignorance, like similar to Pisces, but not the same. There's a way that Capricorn, I think mostly from lack of experience, was probably the difference. Pisces, we're talking about having a lot of experiences and then being able to draw conclusions based on previous experience. I think Capricorn is the ignorance that results from lack of experience, because it's earth, it's tangible. It's experiential, it's sensual in that sense. So if you don't have the concrete experience of something, very Saturn, then you don't really know as much as you think you know. You maybe know what you've heard, like we said, from the Gemini perspective, but you don't really fully know. With Mercury and Capricorn, there's that, again, the level of ignorance. There is the experience of withholding as well, that all earth signs kind of deal with. And this is where Mercury and Capricorn kind of similar, has things in common with Mercury and Virgo. It's not receiving everything that you needed. So something that I can say for myself, at least having the moon be ruled by Mercury and Capricorn, is that like, somebody can ask me what it is that I need if I'm in crisis or if I'm dysregulated or whatever. And like for most of my life, I didn't really know what I needed. So there's that ignorance of like, if you've never had something, then you don't know that it exists. You don't know that it would be helpful. It's the experience of like neglect to an extent, or just lack, where if you like this, that kind of that attitude of you can't miss something that you've never had. Right. So if we're putting this in the realm of Gemini, since we're saying this from the perspective of Mars and Gemini, disrupting truth in a lot of ways, but scrambling maybe our heads with more information, then really Mercury in Capricorn is like less is more. Less information, like you can do a lot with a little bit of information, resourcefulness, right? So where Gemini will just consume information without with reckless abandon, right? That seems Mars appropriate. Consuming information with reckless abandon. Mercury in Capricorn is like, so what if you already know enough for whatever it is that you have the control to, for whatever it is you have the power to actually control or know, that as it pertains to you in your like immediate circumstances, maybe you already know enough. Maybe you don't need to know more. Maybe you don't need to say more. Maybe less is more. So what can you do with the information you already have? And actually, Eric, I think I just saw you say something about this on Twitter too. So that's very timely. Set a time limit on socials while Mercury is in Capricorn. Well, yes, and it's also, I think there's an action oriented part of this too, because it's cardinal. Cardinal is about changing things or shifting things or initiating things or something. So even though maybe you don't have all of the pieces to create a full story, you already know. Like for example, when we were talking about the wildfires, and I think this is very mutable cardinal. We talked about this a little bit last week. Sometimes just knowing that the house is on fire is enough information. We don't need to, in this moment, the urgency is to deal with the house that's on fire, how do we work on getting people out of the way and extinguishing the fire. That's like all the information that we need, is to know that this crisis is happening and we need to respond to it. That feels very cardinal to me. And between Capricorn and Gemini, it's kind of like, okay, like, yeah, we could sit and have a conversation about like, oh, this person said that they're looting over here. Oh, this person said that these wonderful company people have all the water in California. They're the ones to blame. This person said this. Da, 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 da. It was like everybody was talking all this noise, so many different conversations, but how much of that information was actually helping people get what they needed in the time of crisis, right? So that, as an example, moving forward, makes me wonder, like, what will be the situation that comes up, if not something else climate related, with all of these weather incidents? Like, what would be a situation that's coming up where, we want to go into the blame and then trying to like figure out like what's the truth of the situation. It's really like, or maybe we just deal with this little bit of information that we do have and move on that instead of all of this extra noise and speculation and stuff like that. So the thing that you're giving up is the excess information whenever it comes to Gemini and Capricorn. My friend talking about changing the relationship with parents because they see the limitation. Right. I think that's a good point too, even though I'm not sure if this is what you're talking about, but it made me think about managing expectations. Like, one of the things with Capricorn is like, oh, you know what just came to me about this relationship is like, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, almost. So like managing the expectation of, just because you give people more information doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to respond in the way that you want them to respond. You can't like control people's behavior based on giving them information, because at the end of the day, like we said, you can form all kinds of conclusions with information. So it's like, COVID is an example of this to me. You can tell people all day like, hey, these are the realities of COVID. Like, it can do this, it can do this, it can do this. It can make you immune compromised. It's not a respiratory degree. It's not a respiratory disease. It's a cardiovascular disease, or, a vascular disease. You can talk about bird flu. You can talk about this and that. You can give them all of this information. And at the end of the day, because they don't have the personal lived experience with long COVID or with bird flu or with whatever it is, they're kind of going to be like, I hear what you're saying, but until the house falls on my head, the Wicked Witch of the West isn't dead. So it's a weird analogy to say, but I think that's another part of this thing as well. My people always say a little goes a long way, and that's what I've been moving through recently. So this is on brand. Yeah. Trying to give more context can just mean that they think you're arguing. Also that, yeah, neurodivergent dilemma. Yeah. Yeah, I guess there being something to be said about when we're talking about Capricorn having like kind of the ignorance of just not having the material experience of something. It's like theory and air and things like that don't really do much if you haven't had that experience personally. And there's a way that your perspective shifts whenever you've actually lived through an experience versus just being told about it. So I think that's some of that relationship too, where Capricorn could stand to learn from Gemini in the sense that, look, just because this is the only experience you've had doesn't mean that it's the only experience that can be had. Your perspective can be broadened with more information, is what Gemini says to Capricorn. And then sometimes Capricorn is like, yeah, I don't really need to know all that. This information is enough. We move. So yeah, I kind of like that. I hope y'all took notes. So that's our first part. And like I said, Mercury will be in Capricorn from January 24th to February 11th, moving quickly. That's about what, 2-3 weeks. And then this one's really interesting. Capricorn or Mercury is going to blaze through Aquarius. Like that looks like it might be 2 weeks. February 11th through February 27th. Now, Mercury in Aquarius is interesting because it's going to bring in Saturn still, because Saturn's still in Aquarius until March 29th, I think. Oh, my pecs are sore. So Mercury in Aquarius, without talking about Mercury itself, I think Mercury itself kind of fucks with Aquarius. I think there are some systems that think Mercury is exalted in Aquarius, even though it's exalted in Virgo, but I think it's just kind of boring to be exalted in your own sign. No shade. So in my mind, I like to think Mercury is exalted in Aquarius, but regardless, next we talk about the relationship between Gemini and Aquarius, which is a ninth house relationship. Aquarius is in the ninth house from Gemini, but both of these are air signs. So they are using the same tool of the mind and language and imagination and concepts and theories, ideas. They are both in the realm of ideas together and the idea of concepts together. The ninth house, I think about it as a house where we learn things. It's a very institutional house, but it can also be a very spiritual house. And there can be a lot of professionals in that house that can help you. I'll say authorities instead, I think is a better word. There are a lot of authority figures in the ninth house that can help you learn things instead of just doing like self-study, which is a little bit more third house. So it's a reciprocal relationship, a trine, 2 planets in the same element. So when we're talking about air and the idea of concepts and ideas, they're like reinforcing each other. They are supporting each other. They are backing each other up, and they're also hyping each other up in some ways. So people think about trines as always being good things. And since I like to rain on people's parades, trines are not always good. Sometimes they make you a little bit lazy. But in this case, I think it's interesting because Mars is doing so much reshaping, I think, or rather deconstructing, maybe is a better word for Mars, doing a lot of deconstructing, that it's possible that Mercury in Aquarius is like amplifying Saturn in Aquarius. Amplifying Saturn, it's like Saturn has the mic, basically. Yeah, Mercury in Aquarius is very aligned. Great writers and great musicians often have that placement. Yeah. It's a very technical placement. Like Aquarius can be kind of technical sometimes too, but what I'm thinking about is Saturn has the mic whenever Mercury is in Aquarius. And so if Saturn has the mic, Saturn is doing all the speaking. So in some ways, Saturn is directly relaying to Mars and Gemini what needs to be deconstructed. And something intellectual or mental or ideological maybe needs to be deconstructed. That could be good in the situation that we're in. Even though we're still dealing with Venus and Pisces at the same time that this is happening, I think it could be beneficial to have people's perspectives expanded. There's also something about this that feels a little bit like getting a reality check. Maybe not exactly the same as well, the sun will still be in Capricorn until well, no, the sun won't be in Capricorn very long for that transit. So the sun will be in Aquarius too while Mercury is in Aquarius. We haven't had the sun and Mercury in the same sign in a minute. Um so so we'll have an Aquarius stellium, trine Mars and Gemini. Damn. What does that look like on the chart? Because another thing that's still happening in the background that I just remembered is Jupiter in um Taurus. Jupiter is going to station direct in Taurus as well. I know y'all just be hearing me name all these transits and you're like, Winter, how do you keep all this in your head? I don't. Jupiter's going to station direct on February 4th. So that's coming up too. Jupiter's moving really slow right now. So all of those planets are going to be square Jupiter. Let me go to that date. I want to see what it looks like. I'm trying to see what that thing look like. Mm, yeah. Yeah, they are all hanging out there in Aquarius. Trine Mars. Cool. So Emily is calling me. Yeah, so what are we learning during that time, that ninth house relationship? What are we learning from Saturn and Aquarius, basically? And what are we talking about? What is the conversation at hand that has us expanding our self-concept, but also like, are we taking matters into our own hands finally? Something I was thinking about that I wanted to mention, this may or may not be related, but I don't want to forget. The nodes are going to move into Aquarius and Leo, and we get our first Leo eclipse basically sometime around this time period actually. And somebody said something on TikTok the other day that just kind of made me think. And they were talking about she was talking about like Americans in a liberatory sense, but she was talking about Americans like not having a sense of pride in being American, which I think is true. I definitely fall into that category where I'm kind of like, I don't really want to be like associated with this country because of all of the bad shit that it does. But she did pose a question that was like, I love our country in the sense that I love the people and I want better for us. I want good things for us. And so it kind of made me wonder when we're talking about like self-determination and this idea of like, ego death or whatever, and just like also dignity and self-respect from the Leo perspective. It made me wonder if those eclipses are going to kind of bring up that sort of an attitude where, a lot of us can't leave. A lot of us can't just flee and become expatriates, move to another country or whatever, immigrate to other countries. A lot of us are stuck here. And this kind of comes up a lot whenever times get hard in the US and people are like, you should just leave. Um, and people can't go. And it's like, at what point do we stay and fight? And then does that require a sense of like shared identity from us that says, like, okay, we are Americans, maybe not in the imperialist colonialist sense, but what would it mean to change the idea or the identity of American to something that is more um well, to something that is decolonized, even though that seems like a contradiction, but what I don't know, just what would it mean to embrace the identity of American in the sense that this is the land that we're on and we're here as a community, but not embrace the identity of American as the state and those with power have determined it, right? So I thought that was interesting. More of the people by the people, moving out of platitude into concrete. I like that. Yeah. So it just made me wonder, like, yeah, what would it do for us um to actually identify rather than disassociate from the American identity? And I don't know, not necessarily to like take it back. Like I'm not necessarily like take the flag back type of vibes. I think all of that needs like this is not a reform statement basically, but it is just kind of asking the question, what would it look like to reconstruct or re self determine or something? an American identity that isn't rooted in imperialism and colonialism? And then how would having a sense of pride in our national identity in that sense, that is actually in service of all the things that we do believe in, like how would that change the way that we fight for ourselves? Because I think whenever you're stuck in a situation where you don't I think when you're stuck in a situation where you're just like, I am not this place, this place doesn't represent me and whatever else, you can kind of end up with this like hands off approach that's like, you know, well, I'm not implicated in the bad things that America is doing because I don't identify as an American. Whenever it's like, you're still implicated because you live here. You're still implicated because you benefit from the horrors, unfortunately, whether you want to or not. So how do you decolonize your identity and redetermine what it actually means to be an American? I don't know. So not to talk in circles, but I feel like it would need to consider the indigenous identities that already exist here. I agree. Land back, being a big part of that as well. Or being central to that as well. Like, what were the intentions? Well, not necessarily what were the intentions, but just like what would it look like to live in a way more aligned with um, our indigenous populations instead of through the eyes of the state. And of course, this is not like an undertaking that would happen in a few months, but just in general, this idea of embracing a shared sense of self, both ideologically and, I don't know, in that sense. So I don't know. That just made me think about like, if we were to embrace a shared identity, how much we would be more willing to fight for our rights, or fight for our vision of what we want this country to be, or to at least get us to stop harassing everybody else. I don't know. Big ideas, but something I wanted to throw out there that I think is something that could be interesting with the eclipses in Leo and Aquarius, because that is kind of the Leo and Aquarius thing to me, is like, yes, you can disassociate or disidentify with a certain identity because you feel like it doesn't represent you, but not having no identity is not an identity. Saying that you aren't something, as we've heard before, doesn't mean that you are something. So what are you? How do you step into an identity that actually feels like it represents and reflects you? And then so I don't know, I guess one example, maybe this isn't what happens, but one example of that relationship between Gemini and Aquarius is learning more from indigenous groups, from indigenous communities, whether those are I mean, we're already kind of seeing this happen to some extent with people getting on Red Note, Little Red Book, and talking to the two people in China, talking to the Chinese and being like, oh shit, y'all be living like this? And we be living like this? I think we're the third world country. I think we're the ones living in fascism. I think we're the ones. So learning from, because that's another thing with the ninth house. That was so obvious. I don't know why I didn't lead with that, but learning from other countries, from foreign lands, from foreign cultures, how they're living, and letting that inspire or at least open up our perspective to what things could be like at home for us. So learning about other places, learning about other forms of government, forms of organizing societies that allow us to expand our idea of what we think is possible for us here. That could be something really cool. It could also look like, on the negative side, a lot of erasure and a lot of dismissiveness and a lot of censorship too. So I would keep that in mind for that period. So that was Aquarius, Mercury in Aquarius, Trine Mars and Gemini, February 27th, or no, sorry, February 11th through February 27th. Very quick, very brief moment. I think it says a lot that that's like a brief moment, but it does happen when we get the full moon in Leo. Does it? Yes. Dang, it's like a 0 degree. Is it an eclipse? What does it say on my other sheet? Sorry, y'all. Hold on. No, we get a new moon in Aquarius. The full moon is at 29 degrees Cancer, so very close. And then new moon is 15 degrees Aquarius on February 27th. And then the full moon lunar eclipse, first eclipse in Leo in Aquarius, is March 14th. So yeah, I like that. That ended up being a good line of thought. Okay, what time is it? Okay, I'm gonna try to only be on here for like 20 more minutes. So we will finish talking about Mercury and Pisces in this retrograde, because that'll be the last one that I think that transit, Mars and Gemini square Mercury and Pisces, is probably like a micro version of the square between Saturn and Pisces and Jupiter and Gemini. So I would really pay attention to that transit. That's going to be Mercury in Pisces from, like I said, February 27th to May 6th. And the retrograde phase is March 15th through April 7th for that retrograde. Um, so that's going to be a big transit of the year. And Mars will enter Cancer during that transit on April 2nd. But for the most part, we'll have a lot of that transit be the square. And I already kind of talked about the square, so I guess that's just, more things to say. But Pisces is in the 10th house from Gemini. So this is an air water aspect, and it's a square where Pisces has the upper hand in this square, imposing itself on Gemini. Is that right? Yeah, imposing itself on Gemini. The whole relationship between water and air is like water being your body, your feelings, your emotions, your physical experience on Earth. Um, and the way that you feel about things overtakes the idea of it. So it's like, this comes up with therapy a lot. You can kind of intellectualize things and talk about things up here in the ethers for so long, but your body is having usually a different experience that kind of snaps you out of the idea of the thing that you're talking about. And with Pisces in the 10th house from Gemini, 10th house is where we emerge. If I think about the 4th house is where we retreat, literally being in your home, in your private space, somewhere that's not out in the public. It's a, personal space to you. The 10th house is being visible, being seen, being witnessed by other people, having an impact on the world or having impact in your relationships, your reputation, your status, like all those different things, emerging in a way that is visible to other people. So with Mercury in that position, ruling Mars and Gemini, it does kind of sound like maybe some of the pieces start to come together. It's weird. It's a weird square because it's called a square with reception, because like we said, Mercury is the planet responsible for the sign Gemini, but at the same time, is it a square with reception? Yeah, Mercury is in charge of Gemini, but Gemini is in a square with Pisces. So it's a little bit of, yes, Mars is answering to Mercury and Pisces, but doesn't want to listen. I don't want to do what you say. It's giving a little bit of a PDA profile there. Like, yeah, I heard what you said, but I didn't. Wait, I it's like I heard what you said, but I'm gonna pretend like I didn't. And I'm gonna do whatever I want anyway. That's the vibes between Mars and Mercury. Like, yeah, again, fuck what you heard. So that could be cool. But what does that, I don't know, what does that mean in the 10th house sense? Like, Pisces is my 10th house, so that feels personal. 10th house is also like bosses and supervisors, people in charge. So you could have something to do with Trump. Um, yeah, if you just joined the conversation in the later half of this, I think re-listening to the first 30 minutes to an hour of this thing really encapsulates that relationship between Gemini and Pisces. But yeah, it does feel kind of like, hmm, what does the sky look like? Because we go through a lot. We go through a lot of different transits for that. Maybe I'll say this, Mercury in Pisces seems like it's going to usher us into this next Saturn season, this next kind of reality of realizing that maybe things are not what they thought they words. Things are not what we thought they were. Things don't mean what they thought they meant anymore. Like our meanings have changed. the ways that people speak about things and the ways that people understand information have changed. It's really that Mercury retrograde really is like the hallmark transit of the year, like opening the door into the next 3 years. So, maybe we'll talk about it more when we get closer to it, because there's so much happens between February and May that I don't even feel like I could sum up that retrograde without getting a little bit closer to it. So I think it'll be messy though. God, Mercury and Mars, when they start doing stuff with each other, messy bitches. Messy bitches. Potentially very disorienting. Um, discernment, discernment, discernment. I think if anything, like out of this whole conversation, not rushing to confirm your own biases and also gaining some awareness of your biases. Like, what are the things that you want to be true, even though they may or may not be actually true? And then how do you seek out information that only seeks to validate what you do or don't want to be true? You know, because that's kind of the thing with that. Like, Mars and Gemini is going to look for information regardless, or it's going to be receiving information because everyone is spitting it out everywhere at the same time. But what you do with that information in terms of how you, like we said, with pattern recognition, like Gemini is very perceptive, how you organize that information and the conclusions that you draw, like I would almost encourage, I would almost, even though this contradicts a lot of things that we said, I would encourage seeking out. Do I want to say that? I got 15 minutes. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull cards because I did want to pull cards. I've said enough technical shit. So let's do a card pull. Just for Mars and Gemini round 2. Oh no. Okay. I thought I shuffled them wrong. Shut up, Samaje. That's funny. I know you like the way them cards slap around like that. Let's do a little card pull, get a little insight from the ancestors about Mars and Gemini. Spirits, what do we need to know? What can we expect from Mars retrograde in Gemini part 2? And Mars direct. Mars and Gemini in general. What can we expect from this transit? What can we learn from this transit? I always drop cards. I almost dropped my croissant. And any advice that you may have for us. Okay, I'm going to do 3 cards, one on the bottom. Our first card is 6 of Wands. Not a bad start. Not a bad start at all. 5 of Swords in the obstacle position. And King of Cups. After we've been talking about Pisces this whole damn day. Which I also actually think that probably has to do with Mars moving back into Cancer as well. 5 of Swords seems very Mars and Gemini. Oh, wow. And then our card on the bottom for context. Death. Death. Girl, the hell is this? Look at this card. Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Look at this card. Oh, Two of Cups is behind it. That's cute or whatever. Death. So this is our context. I need the camera to not focus on me. Don't focus on me, focus on her. There it goes. Death card. Look at this. He praying for forgiveness or whatever. It's the second coming of Jesus. He stepped all over this man down here. Oh my god. Fuck them kids. Um Death. Santissima. Yeah. I haven't done a 3-card pull in a while, y'all. Bear with me. So we asked this about Mars and Gemini. So Mars and Gemini clearly is the death of something. Death really is just change. Like change in a way that we are not going back to the way things were. Like shit is permanently different. And we have to let go of whatever it was. This actually feels like it represents Mercury entering Capricorn as well. So yeah, letting go. Let it go. Let it change. Don't expect it to be the way that it was. I talked about this actually a few days ago when I talked about the sun entering Capricorn. So that's kind of ironic as well. When the sun entered Capricorn, I was talking about how, like, if you're holding on to hope of something, be mindful that the hope you're holding on to isn't that things go back to the way that they were, because they're not going back to the way that they were. They haven't gone back to the way that they were. What we're living in now is an illusion. You know, in fact, what we're living in now is a skeleton of the way things once were. It's different. And the more that we refuse to acknowledge how things have changed, the harder it's going to be to transition into whatever the imagined future it is that we have for ourselves. But we like really have to get a grip on the fact that like we have changed, the world has changed, and we are in what many of us anticipated being the worst case scenario. However, not so much related to the cards, or maybe it is, but I was also thinking about how as much as things have changed and like the worst has happened, um as much as things has changed and the worst has happened in terms of this man getting elected a second time, there's a way that like when the worst happens, this is very Saturn as well, but when the worst happens, then you kind of like you become aware of what you're capable of and um what you're able to survive, you know, or not survive. But it's that whole thing of like you've survived 100% of your worst days so far. Um, so yes, while some people will die, when the worst happens, then it's kind of like the rock bottom. There's only one way up from there, you know? So if you can get through this, imagine what else you can get through. But first, you have to get through this, which involves acknowledging that you are here and shit is not going back to the way that it was. Rari says, death is transformation, initiations, very tower with a crack, breaking habits, creating new and sitting in it. Absolutely. No. I don't want to go. So yeah, that's our context. The context is shit is different now, permanently. Cool. The first card, very optimistic card, 6 of Wands. Like literally, oh my god. Camera wants to focus on me so bad. I know I'm cute, but these cards are cuter. 6 of Wands is a very celebratory card. Obviously, she's literally celebrating. She's having her walk. Everybody's cheering her on. Everybody got their little wands and she's doing her thing. This being in the first position of this spread, this is the kind of just situation. So in the context of things that permanently changed, like why would we get a card that's talking about victory, especially if we're talking about Mars and Gemini? I don't know. I think that's interesting. Inauguration. Well, yeah. Unfortunately, people are happy. You're fucking right. Thank you for that, Eric. You're so right. I definitely agree with that. Yeah. Inauguration day. I know I've been trying to ignore it this whole live, but I guess we'll talk about it. This representing Inauguration Day. very true. They literally, I don't know if y'all saw that video. Um, I don't know if y'all saw that rap video that came out, but damn, y'all are psychic as fuck. I don't know if y'all saw that rap video with like Roseanne and whoever the other fuck that other guy was, but they were talking about like daddy's home, ooh, we won, you mad, so sad, like all that shit. And it's just like, ew, y'all are so fucking cringy. There's no way that y'all actually think this is cool, but they're legit. They call that man daddy. That is their king. That is their god, Trump. So he did get inaugurated today. I've avoided talking about it this whole time, but unfortunately, this is the reality that we must confront. The world as we once knew it, and a lot of the progress that we've tried to make, even if just in the liberal sense, over the last decade or so, is all going away. Um, and a lot of it has kind of gone away. Like immediately, people were like, enough with the woke mob. Like Facebook Meta was like, yeah, you can actually say that trans people are mentally ill. It's fine. It's the truth. Like, so in the context of Jupiter, Mars and Gemini, then, like, yeah, the truth as we know it has changed. Um, Death to me is like not having physical access to whatever. And with Six of Wands, it's like we didn't get access to victory, the victory that Coconut wanted. So it leads to all the discourse of the Five of Swords. Yes. But I was also gonna say, uh damn, I lost my train of thought. Mars and Gemini. Truth as we know it has officially changed. And the circumstances of um discerning truth have changed because the people, you know what this makes me think of? This along with death is making me think about the people who live to tell the story, or like this idea of especially with like colonization, where people take over whole entire civilizations, and so all of the knowledge and all of the information and all of the ancient texts, like the burning of Alexandria and all of that shit, like the colonizers come through, and because they're the ones who survived after killing everybody off, they're the ones who are allowed to tell the story of what happened, and people then learn those stories and believe it and move on based off of that information. So that's kind of what that combination makes me think of. These people came through, they took over, they won the theoretical war or the literal war or the literal election or whatever. They are the ones who get to tell the stories, and the stories are not necessarily reflective of the truth, but it's the information that's available. And as we've said with Gemini, Gemini is going to take whatever the information is and make use of that, as a way to move forward. So knowing that we have all of these other transits um, to deal with that are conflicting with truth, it kind of makes sense that we now have Five of Swords. And Samaj, I already saying in the chat, Five of Swords is protecting yourself from internalizing other people's narratives. Yeah, and so Five of Swords in this card, you can tell he's got all the swords with him. He's dropped a couple of them, but there are some people who are hurt off in the background. And so, yes, I do think some of it is what Samaje is saying, like not internalizing the stories that are being told by the people who technically won this battle over truth. But there's also something really like, like you won, but you were an asshole about it. This card, that's very much Trump presidency vibes. And all of these people being like, haha, we told you so, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, that creates both of these cards are looking at each other too, which I also think is interesting. Celebrating this win. Celebrating this win and being able to tell the story that they want to tell, while the rest of us are kind of the people in the background, like experiencing the betrayal or experiencing the unfair win or whatever else that they got. He's said things about like, Elon possibly tampering with the machines or whatever, and then like possibly stealing this election as well. We know they've done it before, but we don't actually fully know the truth. So that part of the story, and this being the main conflict, is like, damn, like we fucking lost. Those people basically have all the power to speak on us and say who and what we are and what is true, when the reality is like, well, that just kind of is what it is, as far as that being the card in the middle. Is there anything else I'm picking up off of this card? It's very dystopian too, just the card itself, like the background, like the kind of cinder blocks, and just like it looks very dull background. So we're living in their world, basically. And in a lot of ways, unfortunately, their word is law. And us people who are anywhere left of center are having to contend with that reality. But King of Cups as the solution, as the on the other end of it is really interesting, knowing that eventually Mars is going to move back into Cancer. Um and also that just this so much of this year is full of water, all the Pisces transits that are coming up. And you notice too, this card kind of makes me think about regulation a lot, self-regulation, because the waters are choppy as fuck. You got fish hopping around. He's like literally in the middle of the ocean, but he's just chilling. Grandpa is just vibing in his little dinghy. Like the waters are tossing him about, and he's still just kind of like, yeah, well, this is what it is. So, King of Cups, being able to, especially with these Pisces transits, being able to become a master of your own emotional reality. Like, yes, regulation, but regulation sometimes to me is like just temporary coping skills, which are necessary, don't get me wrong. But if you are in the middle of the ocean, like this man, it's not a quick trip through the ocean. It's that whole marathon, not a sprint thing. And so if you know that you have 3 years of this time period to get through, um, these small moments of just doing what you need to do to feel better, like we've talked about with Cancer, are not going to be enough to get you through. You really have to recreate a truth that you feel emotionally grounded in. That's interesting. That you feel emotionally secure in. And so what does that look like? Knowing the transits that we have coming, especially while Mars is in Gemini. Um, Relationships with other people, community. We've talked about community too. I'm trying to say something that we haven't said that's like super redundant though. It's like, I think that's a really important part of Pisces, is recognizing that emotional narratives are oftentimes the thing that you are battling against. Like when you hear that something is true, or that something has changed, or something isn't what you thought it was, that can be a really emotionally disruptive experience, and like a really disorienting experience. And then there's also the piece of like not wanting to do certain things because, or not wanting to learn the truth about something because it's going to hurt your feelings, it's not going to feel good to learn those things. And then there's also just like, we talk about the Five of Swords again, and like all of the nonsense of when someone is literally changing the story of reality right in front of your face, whenever you know that it's not true, and how emotionally distressing that is too. It's really, 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 really important to ground yourself in an emotional reality that represents like reality for you. I don't know a better way to say that. Do I have an example? I mean, well, yeah. I mean, just using like what's literally going on. They're talking about, one, he gets freaking inaugurated on Martin Luther King Day, if that's not symbolic enough. It's like literal erasure and overshadowing of the entire civil rights movement, by inaugurating this white supremacist fascist fucking dickwad. Um, and all of his followers and all of those people who are trying to say, that trying to make all of these statements about us on the quote woke left, using woke as a pejorative, and trying to get rid of things like critical race theory, trying to get rid of DEI, trying to get rid of um um just equality in general, and reframing and erasing all of the work that we've done towards some idea of equality, even if it's just equality in capitalism. And that can be a really hurtful and emotionally jarring process, to just see them literally erase truth right in front of our eyes. So how do you stay calm through that? Not calm, but I guess, how do you stay grounded? How do you stay secure emotionally through that experience of the entire world becoming a place that's unrecognizable to you? Hi, Nicolita. That really feels like the answer. Like, with Mars and Gemini and all of this chaos ushering in this new era before Saturn, well, as Saturn enters Pisces, what is your plan? What is your process for becoming a master over your own emotional reality and your memory? Like, never forgetting the people who have come before us and the progress that has been made, even if everybody else is ignoring it. That feels relevant too. Rory says, also with the King of Cups, like he's still moving in their sustenance, um, in the fish, also water being fluid regardless of new truths and realities that may dysregulate us in the midst of change. Yeah, I like that too. It's like the context being death and death really being about change. And sorry, I meant to leave that up. Being flexible. Like, it's making me think about when people on Twitter are like in your mentions trying to tell you some bullshit and you just have to like not let that throw you off of your course. I actually got that tea from a reading. Simply Chopin did a reading for me the other day, and one of the points of advice that I got was like, you can't let these moments of disruption like totally throw you off of your course. Like, yeah, it's gonna toss you around a little bit. It's not gonna be comfortable. It's not gonna be smooth sailing, but you can't let it completely throw you off your course. Like, you have to have a level of determination and vision and stay focused on your vision, or in this case, your truth, or whatever it is, the truth, and hold on to that regardless of like what's happening around you. And I thought that was very timely advice for me. But it seems like this also in this reading too. They're going to be loud, they're going to be celebrating, they're going to be taking up all this space in the world, and essentially turning it into their world, their reality. We still have to stay true to what is true for us, and also be willing and able and flexible to navigate these troubling waters. We're still going to have to learn how to navigate these institutions. We're still going to have to figure out how to move through this shared world. Unfortunately, as much as we don't want it to be true, as much as we are not comfortable with the way things are going, we still have to find a way to survive it and to navigate it, which sometimes might even require us to betray ourselves or betray our truths, or to even like, kind of like Samaj said, like not fully adopt their version of truth, but you do have to learn how to move through it, or how to work with it, or make it work for you, or whatever. It's like, you can't just be, you have to take control somehow. And that's definitely what I think the King of Cups does, taking control over your own emotional state and not just letting your body rock you about. One monkey don't stop the show. Yeah. I've had to learn a lot about emotional regulation as of late too. Very timely. Just like, don't be arguing with people who are not arguing in good faith. Don't give emotional labor and attention to people who are literally not trying to see eye to eye with you. Why would you do that? Why would you waste that energy? Why would you let it throw you off course? Why would you let it penetrate you at all? You already know how they feel and what they think. These people who are on the polar opposite end from us, we already know what they feel and what they think. There's no need in like engaging in conflict with them. We've already been in that practice in many ways, thinking about COVID. Yes, exactly. Like, it's not comfortable that was another thing she said in my reading. Like, it's not comfortable to constantly be hypervigilant about protecting yourself and protecting your community. Like, that's an uncomfortable position to be in, constantly scanning for threats, which is also very Pisces, like, and Scorpio, but water in general, constantly scanning for threats to your life and body. That's exhausting. But again, there's a marathon, not a sprint. So you can't constantly put yourself in situations too where you're going to have to have your threat detection up. Like, if you have to go to work in a situation, like already going to work in general, especially if you work 40 hours a week, is taking up a lot of mental and emotional resources from you, right? So and depending on the type of people you work with, they're throwing stuff at you as well too. It's like you have to, again, really forming a strong sense of self and a strong sense of truth that nobody can sway you from within yourself. And so that whenever someone does come at you with some bullshit, it doesn't just totally sweep you off. Like, I feel like that's a very Gemini thing, is whenever you learn something contradictory to something that you really believe, and all of a sudden you're questioning yourself, like, well, am I wrong? And you like spiral out. You're not wrong, because it's your truth. What's true for you is true for you, you know? Um, and there are nuances to that, like we've talked about. Like, sometimes you do have to have a little bit of skepticism towards your own biases and things like that. But still, being grounded in some kind of truth or belief that you can always come back to, or an intention that you can always come back to, or like, it's like whenever I was a yoga teacher, and at the beginning of every practice, you stand at the top of your mat, you go through a little bit of your warm up, and then you take a moment to like go inward and really like, you can come up with a word or an intention for your practice or whatever it is, so that no matter what happens throughout the practice, no matter what the instructor says, no matter what the person next to you is doing, you have this thing inside of you that you are tethered to no matter what, so that if the class gets too intense and your intention for that day was um to slow down or to not do the most, then when you start to feel yourself doing the most, you say, no, I said I wasn't going to do the most today. Let me hit child's pose. Or if you were really going to push yourself today, then you come back around to that and you say, okay, I did say I wanted to push. So even though I really want to give up in this posture, I'm going to lean into it a little bit more. And just, there's some, uh, something that can be gained from, actually, there's self-trust in that. I think that's the point. Like, knowing that you can always come back to this thing that you've rooted yourself in signals to the rest of your body that you can trust yourself to always come back to yourself, instead of easily getting swayed and pulled away by all of these other external factors. I think that is the advice of the King of Cups. Also, that's the wisdom piece of Five of Swords. Yes, you have weapons, but should you go into battle with folks who are just fighting to fight? Ashe. Exactly that. Sometimes bitches just want to be messy. You ain't even got to do all that. Cause to what end? Does it align with whatever that intention is, or whatever that grounding force is inside of you, coming back to yourself? Like, do you really want to let these people take you out of your element? Or do you just find a way to let it roll off? Because it's not worth it. It's not worth it. Don't let it easily shake you off your base just because it caught you off guard, or it's something you hadn't heard before, or that they're trying to get a rise out of you. Don't let them. You have some self-control in that sense. So I think that's wonderful wisdom and insight from Mars and Gemini. Well, maybe not from Mars and Gemini, from the cards about this Mars and Gemini transit and all of the squares that it's going to have with Pisces. Because I do think this card is an excellent depiction of that, just the rough, choppy waters, and like finding a way to stay with yourself through it all, instead of getting easily taken off into all these other directions. Um, and there's some freedom in this too, I think, with the death card being the context of like, even if you're holding on to something, like holding on to old ideas or old narratives or old patterns of behavior, maybe even. In fact, probably mostly that, old patterns of behavior, and letting those go, because you cannot sustain, you really can't sustain that in this world. You need to conserve your energy. You can't sustain old patterns of behavior, because those patterns of behavior were suited to a different world. We're in a different world now today. So learning new ways to adapt and to navigate, um, and to arrive at the truth, stuff like that as well, I think is in this too, especially once Jupiter gets to Gemini. I kind of like that. I fucks with this. I fucks with this. That was a really good catch, y'all, seeing that Six of Wands as Trump's presidency. That went completely over my head. I'm not even gonna hold you. I had that man out of my head so bad. But that's absolutely what that is. This was good. I'm glad that I decided to pull cards. That was like kind of comforting to me, because what I like about it is that it calls the power back to us. That no matter what happens out there, we got us. You know, we have each other. We also have ourselves, and we need to trust that we have ourselves, regardless of what situations we may confront on this very long journey into the new world. It's going to test us. It's going to make us see what we're made. It's going to really test and see what we're made of. It's going to test our beliefs and our theories and our practices and all of that kind of stuff. But I don't know. Sometimes that's what squares are all about. You know, they're all about the challenge of getting shit done, finding a way, surviving, and what you learn about yourself along the way, or what you learn about others along the way, or just allowing yourself to be changed. I think that's like the gist of it. Allow your mind to be changed. Allow your mind to expand and find ways to look beyond what you see. Hell yeah. Okay, that's a bar. I've been on here for 2 hours and 15 minutes. Thank y'all so much. If you haven't liked the video already, oh, hold on, one more word. With the theme of death, it's asking, are you being strategic in navigating around the battles that really aren't yours to be wasting blood over? Use what you learned. There are many ways to skin a cat. Period. I love that. Being strategic in navigating around the battles that aren't yours to be wasting blood over. That is a bar. Hell yeah. Love it when other mediums be in the chat. Okay. Yes. If you haven't liked the video already, please like the video. I need to go work on this workshop. I need to go figure out what basics I want to teach you guys, because I teach you guys so many basics here, but that'll be a learning environment. If you want to ask questions, if you want me to answer questions about your chart, if you just want to work with me one-on-one, well, not one-on-one, but in a group setting, private group setting, and actually be able to talk to me on Zoom, sign up for my workshop. Is in my shop. Mix Mercury, mxmecuri.as.me/101. I should put it in the description of this video. Will I do it? Only time will tell. But yeah, pull up. $10 for non-Patreons, $5 for Patreon members. 2025 iCals are available in my shop. mixmercuryastro.com/shop 2025 aspects and lunations iCals. Get them straight to your phone so you can keep up with the transits on a day-to-day basis. And then every Monday at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time, I will be here on YouTube Live to give you the tea of the week and potentially even more of the future when we have time, like days like today. So thank you so much for joining me. It's always a pleasure to speak to y'all and to kiki with y'all. Thank you for your insights and all that you have shared with me as well. I look forward to seeing you next week, unless something happens that I need to report on later this week. Thank y'all so much. I love you so much. Be safe. Take care of yourself. Drink water. Toodaloo.